I always thought the worst thing that could happen at a wedding was someone getting cold feet. Or maybe the cake collapsing. What I never imagined was smiling at the woman I loved, knowing she had just spent the night with my father. And standing there, he smiled back, like nothing happened. My name is Ethan Ross. I'm 34, born and raised in Austin, Texas. I had the kind of life people post about, a six-figure job in tech, a downtown loft, and a fiancée everyone adored. Her name was Alyssa. Smart, poised, the kind of woman you bring home for Thanksgiving and your mom instantly thinks, that's your forever. And my dad? Mark Ross, retired Army colonel. Medals, discipline, handshakes that meant something. He raised me on principles. On your word. Protect your family. Never flinch. I spent most of my life trying to be half the man he was. The night before our wedding, we stayed in a hotel suite together. Just father and son. Going over seating charts, playlist order, wine pairings. We laughed about childhood friends flying in, argued over red versus white linen. He excused himself to the bathroom, and then his phone lit up. I didn't go looking, but a message preview flashed across the screen, and every cell in my body froze. Last night meant more than I can say. I'm still reliving every second of it. Attached was a photo. Intimate. Undeniable. Taken just a few hours before. That was the moment my world split. I didn't confront them. Didn't call it off. Just smiled. And got to work. 10 years in project management taught me this. When everything falls apart, stay calm and document everything. This would be my most personal rollout yet. The wedding? Still happened. The guests? Still came. And when the priest asked if anyone objected, I raised my hand. What happened next? Shattered 3 lives. And made me question everything I ever believed about love, family, and loyalty. But what I still don't understand is this. How do 2 people who say they love you become the ones who break you the worst? And if you were standing in my shoes, what would you have done? I stared at the screen, not blinking, not breathing. The world around me, hotel lamp, soft jazz, half-finished whiskey, just disappeared. The photo was burned into my mind. Alyssa, my fiancée, wrapped in my father's arms. They looked comfortable, intimate, familiar, like it wasn't the first time, like it wouldn't be the last. That's when I realized. This wasn't a mistake. It was a pattern. My father's phone still sat on the table, screen dimmed now. I reached for mine under the table and quickly snapped a photo of the message. Then the photo. Then the screen info. I didn't know what I was going to do yet, but I knew one thing for sure. I needed proof. Solid. Dated. Stored. 10 years in project management taught me that. Documentation isn't optional. It's survival. A few seconds later, the bathroom door opened. Dad stepped out, drying his hands on a towel. He looked so calm, so normal. Tomorrow's the big day, he grinned, walking over to refill his glass. I'm proud of you, son. I forced a smile. My mouth moved, but my heart didn't. I appreciate that, I replied, steadying my breath. He clinked his glass to mine. We toasted, to a lie. Back in my hotel room, I sat on the edge of the bed, heart pounding like a war drum. I wanted to pick up the phone, Alyssa, maybe even Mom. But I didn't. Because this wasn't heartbreak. It was something colder. Betrayal you can't unfeel. 2 people I trusted with everything had looked me in the eye for months and lied. I wasn't going to explode. I was going to expose. By 2 a.m., I was in the hotel's business center. I called in a favor from an old colleague, someone I'd worked with on a chaotic product launch years ago. In under an hour, we had a password-protected web page, a QR code, and a print-ready file. I uploaded the screenshots, the photo, the metadata. No fluff, no spin, just truth. Then I printed 120 cards on clean white stock with an elegant serif font. On the back, it simply read, "Scan for a special surprise from the bride and groom." In a world of digital invites and wedding hashtags, no one would question it. In today's world, people are used to digital invites, behind-the-scenes footage, wedding hashtags. Nobody would question it. By dawn, I was back in my room. I showered, shaved, put on my tailored tux, and stared into the mirror. I didn't see a victim. I saw someone, ready to take control. At the church, everything looked like a dream. The flowers, the music, the guests in their finest. My mom was radiant. My groomsmen laughed and posed for selfies. Dad arrived, smiling like a politician. And Alyssa? She looked stunning, hair in soft curls, gown hugging her just right. She kissed my cheek. "You ready to start forever?" she whispered. I smiled. "More than you know." The ceremony began right on schedule. As the priest welcomed everyone, my wedding coordinator, Melissa, quietly moved through the pews, slipping the QR cards into each program. Guests smiled, curious. A few scanned immediately. It started slowly, just a flicker, a pause, a sharp inhale, then whispers, then hands clutching phones. A wave of realization began to spread across the church like wildfire. Cousin Jake furrowed his brow. Uncle David whispered something to his wife. My college roommate Mike leaned forward, eyes wide, mouthing, "What the hell?" The air shifted. Something was happening. They knew it. Alyssa didn't. She stood facing forward, serene and smiling. My father watched from the front row, clueless for now. And then the moment came. If anyone here knows of any reason why these two should not be joined in holy matrimony. I stepped forward. My footsteps echoed across the marble floor. Every guest turned. Phones dropped into laps. Jaws tightened. Alyssa glanced over, confused. My father blinked. "I do," I said into the microphone. A hush fell over the church. "My name is Ethan Ross. And before we continue this ceremony, I have something to share." Alyssa turned toward me, smiling at first. But when I didn't smile back, her expression faltered. Confusion crept in. Then fear. The kind of fear you don't feel unless you know you've been caught. The kind of fear that freezes your throat and screams in your gut. "I have something to share," I said again, my voice echoing through the church. I held up my phone. "I know this is unorthodox," I said, locking eyes with Father Mason, who looked like he was about to faint. "But I promise, it's important." I turned back to the guests, scanning the room. My childhood neighbors, high school teammates, my mom's coworkers, Alyssa's sorority sisters. People who had shown up to witness a celebration of love, not its funeral. I took a breath. Last night, just hours before this ceremony, I discovered something. A message. A photo. A betrayal. Gasps broke the silence. "Alyssa," I said, turning to her now, "I loved you with everything I had. I trusted you more than anyone else on this earth. I was ready to build a life with you." Her eyes glistened. "Ethan, what are you talking about?" I didn't answer her. I turned slightly, facing the first row. "And Dad, you weren't just my father. You were my hero, a decorated veteran. The man who taught me about loyalty, about honor, about how to treat people right." His face went blank. The mask slipped. And for the first time, I saw it. Guilt. Undeniable. Raw. Whispers erupted in the pews. "But what I learned last night," I continued, "is that the two people I trusted the most were lying to me. Sleeping together. Behind my back. For months." You could hear a pin drop. No music. No footsteps. Just quiet devastation. Then, one by one, the guests began reaching for their phones again, those who hadn't already seen the QR code scan. The web page I created. The message. The photo. Proof. Alyssa stepped forward, voice trembling. "Ethan, I didn't mean for it to happen. We were both just lost." I shook my head. "Stop. Don't rewrite it. You were supposed to be my future," she whispered. "And you were supposed to protect it," I said. I raised my hand, stopping her. "Don't insult me. Don't insult the people here by pretending." My mother, God bless her, sat frozen in the front row, mascara already streaking her face. She turned slowly toward my father and whispered one word. "Why?" He didn't respond, and that silence was louder than anything he could have said. I looked out at the stunned crowd. Then I did something no one expected. I smiled. Because for the first time in 12 hours, I wasn't carrying this alone. The weight had shifted. The truth was no longer mine to bear quietly. It was out in the world. "This wedding," I said clearly, "is over. And so are the lies." And just like that, I stepped back from the altar, took off the boutonniere pinned to my tux, and dropped it at my father's feet. Alyssa burst into tears. My dad stood there, paralyzed. I didn't yell. I didn't scream. I walked, calmly, confidently, down the aisle, past every single person who had just watched the truth unravel like a fire in a dry forest. Some reached for me. My best man, Daniel, whispered, "Do you want me to drive?" I nodded once. "Please." Outside the church, the fall air slapped my face like a cleansing wind. Crisp. Brutal. Honest. I stood at the top of the church steps, took a deep breath, and looked back through the glass doors. Inside, Everything was chaos. My father chasing after my mom. Alyssa's sister yelling. The priest trying to regain control. But there was no saving it. Because this wasn't a wedding anymore. It was a reckoning. By noon, someone had posted the QR link online. Probably one of Alyssa's cousins. By evening, it had spread to Reddit and Twitter. The groom who exposed his cheating fiancée and father at the altar. QR code confession goes viral in Austin wedding shock. I didn't check the comments. Didn't care. But I'll tell you what I did feel. Relief. A strange, sad, powerful kind of relief. I had been willing to marry a woman who saw nothing wrong with deception. I had been admiring a father who didn't deserve the pedestal I'd built for him. I had escaped before signing away my life to a lie. 2 days later, Mom filed for divorce. Her message was short. You saved us both. I love you. And Alyssa? She called, texted, sent letters. Her family begged me to reconsider, blamed the stress, said it was a temporary lapse. But betrayal doesn't get undone with an apology. It gets remembered. The Monday after the wedding, I didn't go into work. I didn't answer my phone, didn't check emails, didn't open the curtains. The buzz outside kept growing, Reddit threads, TikToks, news headlines like QR code wedding meltdown in Austin, and groom's digital revenge goes viral. Some people called me a legend. Some said I went too far. But none of them had lived through what I did. Betrayal doesn't just break you. It reshapes you into someone you never asked to become. I was raised to be steady. Reasonable. My dad made sure of that. Never react emotionally, he used to say. Make decisions like a man. Calm. Measured. And yet, he was the one who shattered every principle he ever taught me. It's strange how fast your identity collapses when the people who built it destroy it. My therapist, yes, I started seeing 1-2 weeks later, called it relational disintegration. Basically, it's when your entire belief system collapses because the people you trusted the most proved they never deserved it. I wasn't just mourning Alyssa, or even my father. I was mourning who I used to be. I didn't speak to my dad for almost 6 weeks. When he tried to call, I blocked the number. When he sent a long, typed letter, I shredded it unopened. I wasn't ready. Maybe I never would be. My mom, though? She was a storm in motion. She moved out of the house within a week. Filed for divorce before the flowers from the wedding even wilted. Cut up every photo of him in the family albums. We met for lunch one Saturday at a diner in South Congress. She looked tired but free. He didn't just betray me, she said quietly. Stirring her coffee. He betrayed the version of him we believed in. And that hit me harder than anything else. Because isn't that what betrayal really is? Not just the act, but the way it forces you to question your own judgment, your memory, your past. People kept asking, why did they do it? What would make a father sleep with his son's fiancée? What would make a woman jeopardize a wedding, a future, a life? The truth? I don't know. And the most honest thing I can say is, I stopped caring why. I spent too many nights replaying moments in my head. The glances at family dinners. The overly polite exchanges. That one time my dad drove Alyssa home from the rehearsal and took longer than expected. Hindsight is cruel. It turns red flags into neon signs you somehow missed. I talked to Daniel, my best man, more than anyone during that time. He's the one who reminded me that people who lie don't always look like liars. They look like parents, like fiancés, like the people who tuck you in and promise they'd never hurt you. Daniel had gone through a betrayal of his own a few years back. His wife had cheated with his business partner. You start thinking the problem was you, he said, that you missed the signs. And maybe you did. But that doesn't make the betrayal your fault. I took a leave of absence from work. My company, surprisingly, was understanding. I had built enough goodwill in 10 years that when I explained, briefly, what had happened, they said, take what you need. We've got your back. And that made me cry. Because the strange thing about betrayal is how it makes kindness feel unbearable. I wasn't used to support. I was used to trying to be okay so no one would feel uncomfortable. But this time, I let people show up for me. 3 weeks in, I booked a flight to Colorado and stayed in a cabin for 5 days with no Wi-Fi, no news alerts, no headlines. Just snow, silence, space. And I did something I hadn't done since the night I discovered that message. I slept. When I came back to Austin, something had shifted. I still hurt. But it wasn't the kind of pain that controlled me anymore. It was quieter, heavier, but manageable. I finally called my father. The phone rang 6 times. Then his voice. Ethan? I didn't say much. Just this. I'm not calling to fix anything. I'm calling because I need to say one thing out loud. Silence. I didn't deserve what you did to me. And you don't deserve to be in my life right now. Then I hung up. 3 months after the wedding that never happened, I packed up my apartment in Austin and moved to Denver. No big announcement. No goodbye party. Just a U-Haul, a Spotify playlist, and a heart that had been shattered enough to crave altitude. I needed somewhere new. Somewhere no one knew my name or my story. Somewhere I could start from zero without scanning every coffee shop for whispers or curious glances. Denver gave me just that. I signed a lease on a one-bedroom with mountain views. Joined a local tech startup that didn't care about my past, only that I could deliver results. And for the first time in years, I let silence be part of my day, instead of something I was scared of. Mornings became sacred. Coffee, a journal, no phone. Some days, the pain still flared, usually triggered by the smallest things. A wedding photo on Instagram, a voicemail from a mutual friend, the scent of the same perfume Alyssa used to wear. But I didn't run from it anymore. I let it wash over me, then pass. Like grief, betrayal doesn't need to be solved. It just needs to be survived. I started therapy again, this time with a woman named Claire who specialized in relational trauma. One session, she asked me something that stopped me cold. What do you miss more, her or who you thought she was? I sat there, stunned, because I realized I didn't miss Alyssa. Not really. I missed the illusion, the idea of partnership, the belief that someone knew the real me and loved me anyway, the safety that was never actually real. What I grieved most was the version of my life I thought I was building. By month 5, I started dating again. Nothing serious. Just coffees, conversations, learning how to trust without handing someone the keys to my soul on the second date. There was one woman, Jenna, who surprised me. She didn't flinch when I told her I'd been left at the altar. She didn't try to fix me, or pity me, or tell me I was better off. She just nodded and said, "That must have hurt like hell." It was the most healing sentence I'd heard in months. One night, we went hiking just outside Golden. At the summit, she asked me, "Do you think you'll ever forgive them?" I paused, not because I didn't know, but because forgiveness no longer meant what it used to. I already did, I said slowly. Not for them. For me. She didn't respond with some rom-com line. She just reached for my hand and sat beside me while the sun dipped behind the peaks. And that silence? It felt like peace. Back in Austin, my father had quietly sold the house, moved into a smaller place in Round Rock, tried, apparently, to rebuild what was left of his reputation. Mom refused to speak his name. Alyssa moved to Phoenix. Word got back to me that she'd applied to grad school. She never tried to contact me again. I didn't need closure from her. I already had it. Because here's the truth no one tells you. You don't need an apology to heal. You don't need answers, or final conversations, or a cinematic ending with music swelling in the background. You just need to choose yourself over and over again until the choosing feels like home. 6 months after I arrived in Denver, I took a walk alone through the city and past a church. A wedding was happening inside. For a second, I froze. But then I smiled. Because this time, I wasn't the broken man with a QR code and a vendetta. I was Ethan Ross. Still healing. Still learning. But no longer bleeding. And that felt like something worth holding on to. It was just past noon on a Sunday in May when the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. Outside, the Colorado sky was clear, sunlight bouncing off the windows, casting warmth through the living room. When I opened the door, my father stood there, thinner, grayer, and, for the first time in my life, small. "Hi, Ethan," he said. My stomach tightened, not in anger, but in recognition. You don't forget the face of the man who broke you. I didn't invite him in. Didn't ask how he found my address. Didn't offer coffee. Just stood there, silent. He held a folder in his hand, plain, manila. I remember thinking it looked too formal. Too tidy for what he'd come to say. "I'm not here to defend what I did," he said. "Because there's no defense." I didn't nod. Didn't move. He continued. "I ruined the most important relationships in my life. And I've lost more than I can explain." There was no performance in his voice. No tears. No begging. Just regret. Heavy. Aged. Real. He handed me the folder. Inside, a letter to my mother. A letter to me. And a typed document, one I hadn't expected. A signed statement relinquishing all claims to the family trust. His way. I suppose, of saying I don't deserve anything from you anymore. I'm not asking you to forgive me, he said. Just to hear me. I didn't open the letters. Not then. I asked him one question instead. Why? He looked down. I wish I had an answer that made sense, he said. But I think I was chasing something I had already destroyed in myself. He spoke about how retirement had made him feel invisible, how watching me thrive while he slowed down stirred something in him, jealousy, shame, maybe fear. I didn't love her, he said. I loved what she made me feel, young again. Seen, like I still mattered. He looked up. It wasn't about her. It was about the version of me I couldn't accept losing. He looked up at me again. And you were the one who paid the price. There was a pause. Then I said the last thing I ever planned to say to him. I forgive you. Not because he earned it. Not because I wanted reconciliation. But because forgiveness isn't about setting them free. It's about setting yourself free. He nodded. Quietly. Then turned to go. Before he reached the steps, I said, don't come back. He stopped. I won't. And that was it. No hug. No closure music. Just the clean ending of something long overdue. That night, I read the letter he wrote me. It was honest. Not poetic. Not trying too hard. Just a man acknowledging his worst self and admitting it cost him his son. He said he wakes up every day knowing he's the villain in the story of someone he raised. That part stuck with me. Because the hardest truth about betrayal is that the people we love most are also capable of doing the most damage. Not because they don't love us, but because they're broken in ways we never saw coming. I shared the letter with my therapist. She circled a sentence in it and said, this is where he stopped trying to rewrite the narrative. That's rare. The line? If I could go back, I wouldn't fix what I did. I'd fix whatever inside me made me think it was okay. I don't know if I'll ever speak to him again. But that line. That's the only apology I ever needed. A week later, I sat on my apartment balcony with a beer in hand, thinking about what I would have told my 25-year-old self if I had the chance. Probably this. The worst betrayal won't come from enemies. It'll come from the ones who tucked you in, taught you to throw a baseball, and said they'd always protect you. And even when it breaks you, you'll survive it. Maybe not the same, maybe softer, but stronger too. Because sometimes, becoming who you're meant to be requires letting go of who you thought raised you right. A year after the wedding that never happened, I met my mother for lunch in Boulder. She chose the place, a small cafe tucked between a bookstore and a flower shop. The kind of spot she always loved, quiet enough to think, warm enough to talk. She wore blue. Like she had on the day everything fell apart. We hugged. Not the tight, relieved kind, but the kind that says, we're still here. Over lemon tea and a shared salad, she asked, do you hate him? It was the first time she'd said his name without saying his name. I shook my head. I don't hate him, I said. I just don't carry him anymore. She smiled. Small, tired, but real. That's enough. She whispered. She told me she'd finalized the divorce. Sold the house. Moved into a condo by the lake where she walks every morning at 7 a.m. Says the silence used to hurt. Now, it feels like healing. We sat in that cafe for 2 hours. And for the first time in a long time, we didn't talk about what we'd lost. We talked about what we still had. And I realized, surviving betrayal doesn't just change your relationship with others. It changes your relationship with yourself. A few months later, something unexpected happened. A friend from my new job asked if I'd be willing to speak at a youth group he mentors. Topic: rebuilding trust after trauma. At first, I laughed. Me? The guy who caught his fiancée and father having an affair? Who weaponized a QR code at a wedding? But the more I thought about it, the more it made sense. Maybe the people who understand trust best are the ones who've lost it completely and still chose to believe again. So I went. 30 teenagers. Folding chairs. One broken microphone. And me. I told them my story. Not all the details. Just the heart of it. How the people closest to you can break you in ways strangers never could. How betrayal feels like drowning in a pool you thought was safe. And how healing isn't some triumphant montage. It's brutal, slow, boring, and worth it. Then I said this. Trust isn't something you lose once and never get back. It's something you rebuild with stronger hands, clearer eyes, and smarter boundaries. They listened. Some cried. And one girl, maybe 16, came up afterward and whispered, my dad cheated on my mom with her best friend. I thought I was broken forever. I looked her in the eye and said, you're not broken. You're in the middle of your story. That night, I walked home with a new kind of peace. Not closure, not revenge, just quiet strength. Because here's what no one tells you about betrayal. It doesn't end when they apologize. It doesn't end when they suffer consequences. It ends when you decide the pain no longer gets to write your narrative. Today, I still live in Denver. Still work in tech. Still drink black coffee and journal most mornings. I'm dating someone new. Slowly. And I'm not scared this time. Because I've learned to trust again. Not blindly. Not recklessly. But intentionally. So if you're watching this, maybe because you've been hurt, lied to, left behind, or blindsided. Here's what I want you to know. You're allowed to be shattered. You're allowed to fall apart. But you are not obligated to stay broken. You can rise. You can rebuild. You can choose truth, even when others chose lies. And one day, you'll look back not in rage, but in wisdom, and say, that was the moment I became someone I never thought I could be. If you found something in this story that echoed your own, leave a comment. Share your voice. You never know who needs to hear it.